All right. Episode 4 of Worst Neighbor Ever was The Executor, and that was a wild closeout for the season. This woman, if she would not have been stopped, I guarantee there would be a much larger body count. I even kind of wonder, should there be an investigation to see if there is anyone else that she has swindled from. So Carolyn Hurling and her assistant or associates, let me say that. She was going around and targeting affluent areas and always running some type of scam. From what it sounds like, she's always been a sketchy person and always trying to get over and see what she can get away with. But what ultimately gets her in trouble is that Charles Wilding was a reclusive and he was a wealthy man from Sherman Oaks, California. And from what it sounds like, it was a very family oriented area where he lived. Um, but suddenly, like, no one heard from him. And when I say heard from him, it was a long time since anyone had heard from him because he was a recluse and he didn't have any family. Um, but he was gone long enough where people started getting concerned and the police started asking Carolyn, where is he? And she just kept coming up with excuses, but she kept showing documentation that she was the executor of his estate. So finally, the investigators get frustrated and they decide to include the professionals into investigating what happened to Mr. Hurling and or Wilding, apologies. And they realize that all the documents that she is presenting are forged and they need to figure out what's going on. While all this is going on, her poor neighbors have endured months of just noise complaints, weird odors, just the worst, most inconsiderate neighbor that you could ever imagine. So they all come together and they bring their issues to the landlord. And the landlord tells them that they don't have to worry about them anymore because, or worry about her anymore because she's being evicted. So she ends up purchasing a home, and by all accounts, the neighbors were instantly uncomfortable because the first time that she introduced herself, she informed the neighbors that she was making or she was trying to open a sober living home. So reasonably so the neighbors are like, okay, well, what will this attract? What kind of neighbors will we have? What kind of noise complaints? All the things. And they said within a month, that's when they start noticing all of their worst fears coming to fruition. There was an incident where there was someone passed out in a car on the road, obviously intoxicated or under the influence or both, loud parties all hours of the night, so many disturbances. Well, while all this is going on, the police are still investigating because they know that the documentation is not real. So they need to figure out what's going on, but it's not enough to just really crack it open yet. So they finally have one more meeting with her because, again, no one has heard from him. Where is he? We need to know something. Is he dead? Is he alive? And when they corner her, or when they get a search warrant, is what they end up getting. They only get a search warrant for the home that she's currently in. But when they get there, there is a trove of things that you are going to jail for: drugs, weapons. The amount of weapons in that house, I was wondering, what is she preparing for? But they end up asking her what happened, and she's still denying. She's saying that he's alive. She even said that the rumor is that Mr. Wilding went away to have a sexual reassignment procedure. She is doing everything but answering their questions. So the investigators knew they had to figure out what was going on, if they can find any accomplice, because she is not going to tell them anything. Finally, get someone who can give us some answers. And her co-conspirator, Matthew Jason Croft, said that he was breaking into Mr. Wilding's house and found him deceased. I know, sounds a little like not true, really. That's really convenient. And when he found him deceased, he wanted to let Carrie know, and Carrie stepped right in, ready to go, knowing what to do, and they cleaned the house. They put him, and just trigger warning, if you don't want to hear about body dismemberment or mutilation or anything, please turn it off. So they put his body in a has anybody seen Breaking Bad with the bathtub scene? That's pretty much what they try to do. And then they put him in a container and they try to disintegrate the rest of his body. And they're able to get most of the tissue disintegrated except for the bones. But they pretty much like ran a was it hose down through the side of the apartment building, and they ran did like a runoff to get rid of the rest of his remains. And it correlates with statements from the neighbors because they said that they could smell a foul odor, so we can put two and two together and realize that this was it. Also, when they raided the sober living facility, they found a lot of other forged documents that she was using or planning to produce to con other people. In the short amount of time that she had taken over Mr. Wilding's estate, she had transferred over $600,000 to her own personal account. So there's no telling if the police would never have caught up with her, what she would have done, or what she would have, or who would have gotten hurt, so she could get what she wants. Her assistant actually helped with the disposal of the rest of his remains. They rented a convertible, drove out of town, and dumped his body in a body of water, and then they partied it up, and they went about their lives like nothing ever happened. So they finally confront her with all the information. She does come clean. She tells them how they did it, what they did, and um yeah, so she is finally called to justice. Her assistant did not get any prison time, which I'm like, you help dispose of a body, but there's not much information out there of like what happened to the assistant or anything like that. She did get 20, or Carrie did end up having to serve 20 years in prison. But when we say the con like never ended, they actually interviewed a former friend of hers who was married to a wealthy man, and they would travel together, and her husband would flip the bill. And the woman said she had no issue with it because Carrie was such a good friend and she felt that she could trust her, and they enjoyed their time together. Well, the woman and the husband eventually decide to get a divorce, and Carrie says, well, I'll give you advice through this. I'm not a lawyer, but I can give you good advice on what to do, how to handle the situation. And she invoiced this woman for all their conversations like an attorney. It ended up actually getting litigated. And I think what Carrie thought is that she was going to get away with it and they're just going to pay her and shut her up and move on. But the ex husband actually took her to court, and the charges, or not the charges, but the case was dropped because it's crazy. You're not a lawyer. You're not licensed. You're not licensed to give or legal advice. But it was a good closer for the season, and I wonder if we'll get more seasons of, what was it, worst ex ever and worst roommate ever. Like I said, I feel like Netflix with these documentaries as of lately, it's like, you know what, we found some pretty wild characters out there, but let's get more crazy. Hold my beer. I got a story for you. So I look forward to see what their next drop is, and everyone have a good night. Bye.